Oh, hey man, what's up? You want some? That's a nice antique statue you've got there. Oh no.
So Crimesight is a multiplayer game for between 2 and 4 players, where an evil AI called Moriarty tries to make a murder happen, and a crime-fighting AI called Sherlock tries to stop it. And by the way, I got 2 free keys to cover this one as it is a multiplayer game. When in the 1v1 mode, the roles aren't hidden. One player takes control of Sherlock and the other takes control of Moriarty. The 3v1 and 2v2 modes, however, add some more intrigue, as at the start everyone is assumed to be good, but there's an imposter among us. Oh, wrong game. Unlike Among Us though, Crimesight is turn-based, and takes place over the course of 3 days. We have 6 pawns on the board, including a killer and a target, and any player can attempt to move them. Sherlock can move more characters than Moriarty, but if both Sherlock and Moriarty try to move the same character, it's Moriarty's orders that'll be obeyed. Moriarty also knows the identity of the killer and the target, whereas Sherlock doesn't. The only character Moriarty can't move is his intended victim. Each character can move up to 3 squares, so long as they're not exhausted, and can search certain areas for food, medicine, and weapons. Green spots will always be food or medicine, red spots will always be weapons, and orange spots could be anything. The murder will happen if both the killer and the target are alone together, and the killer has a weapon. The win conditions are simple. Moriarty wins if the murder happens, Sherlock wins if he's thwarted. Now personally, I really enjoy the more tactical elements that having this more complicated, almost board game approach gives, and the cat and mouse nature of the game means there's so many mind games going on in any match. As Moriarty, you have to strike a balance between completing your goals, but also being subtle enough that Sherlock doesn't figure out what's going on too early, because if he does, it's going to make your life significantly harder. And as Sherlock, you'll want characters to search the map for food and medicine, but there's a risk they'll find a weapon, and you could be giving the killer exactly what they need. That's why as Sherlock it's so important to figure out who is a danger early on, and the game helps you with this with a really cool if slightly complicated arrow map you can bring up to show who is a danger to who, and at the end of each day Sherlock will tell you if the killer is within 3 spaces of the target, which is incredibly vital information. However, as awesome as all this is, here is where we come up against our first issue. As tactical as this game is, there's still a lot of RNG here. If nobody chooses to move a specific character, and bear in mind that it's impossible for all characters to be controlled in a turn, that character will make a random move on their own. This can be totally inconsequential, but they could also randomly move to a room with the killer and the target and thwart the murder, or even worse, the target could randomly wander in or out of range of the killer. This leads to a number of frustrating moments playing Crimesight, but fortunately I don't view this as an overly competitive or serious game, and matches are short enough that you can shake it off pretty quickly. Unfortunately, there isn't too much variation between matches, and every game plays out in a pretty similar way, with Sherlock trying to find out what's going on and search for food and medicine, and Moriarty trying to isolate the target with the killer and searching for weapons. The maps too are all very samey, with the 3 on offer each being a variation of an Old English manor. I would have preferred some variety in the setting here, but I can see they were going for a Poirot or Agatha Christie style thing. What baffles me though, is that the maps aren't randomly generated. It's clear that each room in a map is effectively a module, and I think it would have been relatively easy to stitch these together in random ways for better variety. Sure, this may lead to some maps that slightly benefit either Sherlock or Moriarty, but as I said, I don't think Crimesight is supposed to be overly competitive, so does it really matter if one player gets an edge in a couple of games? Now, there are some random elements that keep things a little more interesting. These are secret passages that you can find that change some of the routes through the map, gas leaks that will hurt players that stand in them and effectively make a room somewhere to avoid for a few turns, fuse boxes that can be found and sabotaged so that the lights go out, and the killer can then kill the target even if there's another character in the room with them, and hilariously, wild dogs that come bursting through the window, which of course happens all the time here in England. I'll regularly be sat around in an evening reading my super intellectual serious book, and I'll hear glass smash in another room and think, not the bloody dogs again. Me and Ryan have a really good laugh about this in our gameplay video, which you can find on my second channel, Less Than Optimal. Shameless plug. These dogs will randomly wander around the map and attack any pawn they find, and while they're a really dumb concept, they do add another obstacle that both Sherlock and Moriarty will have to deal with to the best of their ability. Now, you might be thinking, hey, this game looks like my sort of thing, but I wouldn't want to jump in against real players because there's a bit of a learning curve here. Well, Crimesight does have a pretty good single-player tutorial setup, including an actual basics of the game style tutorial and 7 different scenarios, where you can try out different aspects of the game. Personally, if they'd thrown in a bit of story for these missions, I'd have happily taken this as a single-player campaign and enjoyed my time playing through it, especially because it's not actually a guarantee that you'll win every scenario, so it's not like you can just breeze through it. The multiplayer, however, is the real meat of the game, and while I think it's way more interesting to play against real people than against a computer, this is also the biggest weakness of the game, because the player base just isn't there right now. If you want to play 1v1, maybe you'll be able to find a game in a reasonable amount of time online. But in the 4-player modes, it's going to be a long wait if it happens at all. And I think this problem stems slightly from Crimesight's more tactical approach to the Among Us formula. Yes, for me personally, it's more interesting, and you can actually slowly figure out what's going on in each match. But it's just not as simple to pick up and play, and watching this on Twitch or YouTube isn't nearly as easy to get into as Among Us is. You need to know the rules, and there's nowhere near as much minute-to-minute tension or action. Aside from that, Crimesight is also way more expensive than Among Us, and there's no free mobile version to buff up the player base. How do they solve this major issue? Honestly, I don't think they do. I'd say go free to play, but I don't see how they'd make any money at all off of that. Even if they tried to sell cosmetics, no single player controls all the characters. So which player's Barkley or Agatha skin would get applied? And would anyone even care enough? Personally, I don't think they would. The best option may be a significant price drop to bring this more into line with Among Us, and a free mobile version could be possible in my opinion, especially if they did a top-down 2D version, because this is turn-based and you don't need the 3D graphics to make this work. But I really don't see a way back for Crimesight at the moment, and that's a massive shame because I really enjoyed my time with the game. So if you're looking to pick this one up for the online multiplayer, I'd say avoid it right now, it's too much of a risk. But if you've got a friend or 3 to play with, Crimesight is a really fun experience, and in my opinion, definitely worth a look. Thank you so much for watching until the end, and I hope you enjoyed this slightly new style of video with the little skits in it and the on-camera sections. I'm quite unsure about doing on-camera stuff, but let me know what you thought, and a like and subscribe is always appreciated. Thank you so much for watching, I'll see you next time.